A staple I do in all interviews in order to start things off is to ask that you elaborate a bit about your work and this particular role for those not familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Anjali Kunapaneni. Oh, expand about my work. I've been an actor for a few years now, like four years. I've been mainly in the anime, gaming, a little bit of animation and commercial space. Um, I obviously play Alma in Monster Hunter Wilds. I also am known for playing Roy in Pokemon Horizons, Yuki in Jujutsu Kaisen, Dori in Genshin Impact, Sushang in Honkai Star Rail, a bunch of other characters. I'm in the new Spider-Man series, IMDb. Um, yeah, love the work. I've been very, very fortunate to be a part of some really cool projects, and including Monster Hunter. Um, Alma is such a fun character for me because she is so much more like even keeled than the kinds of characters I usually play. Um, which is really nice for me. She's like a very calming presence, and I like that. Um, and Yeah, I've been like part of this journey, I guess, for a while. We've been recording this game for a long time. I'm in Los Angeles now, but I actually was on the East Coast for most of the pandemic, and I started recording her then, and so like early stages. And so it's been a crazy couple of years, like getting to, see all this come together, and now that the game is out and like people have been really enjoying it, it's been a really, really cool feeling. And like, I do conventions and events sometimes, and I like meet people who've like played the game and had my voice in their ear for so many hours, and it's a very cool feeling, and I'm really glad that people are liking it.
In Monster Hunter Wilds, you provide the performance for Alma. Could you tell us a bit about the character and the situation she finds herself in?
Yeah, totally. Alma, I think, is very similar to me in certain ways. Just that she has sort of her nerdy fixations and her uh like real genuine earnest passion about like learning more about things. And in her particular case, she is interested more on like the anthropology side and the history of a lot of the monsters that we encounter, the places where they're found. And so I think she makes a really good addition to this journey that we get to go on in this game. And yeah, I think that like being the handler of this new game um was a really interesting and kind of intimidating like role to step into. She is so present throughout the game, and I was definitely aware that like um there were certain like expectations and feelings and uh, things that people wanted out of this character. And so I kind of had to both balance consideration of that while also not letting it influence like the performance or involvement too much. And a lot of the credit to, I think, and my perception has been that there's you know, a pretty positive response to Alma. Um, I credit a lot of that to the writing and the amazing writers behind this character. Uh, yeah, in my opinion, my very biased opinion, I think she makes a really great addition to the little group, and um, yeah, and so I'm really glad that she is there.
When preparing to perform as Alma, were you given any initial direction in regards to the character, just in terms of an example of prep work to get into the mindset of this particular performance?
Yeah, I think the key details that we talked about when it came to her personality mainly. I mean, we talked about like her interests and her her involvement with the guild and her just passion for um history and research and learning more about like different cultures and et cetera, et cetera. That aside, just personality wise, I think we wanted the approach for her to be so, like a very empathetic soul. I think she really and I think those things are tied together. You know, she's so fascinated and interested by the people and things around her, and she wants to connect and relate to those things and understand them ultimately. And I think that really shows in her personality as well. And she is so gentle and supportive and empathetic. Um, and that was, I think, those were definitely key things that from the beginning we were thinking about with this character. And I hope it came through.
As Elma, you play the role of a support handler, but your character's quite actively engaged in the hunt. When recording voice lines, what was the direction like for those moments of action where you're part of the hunt versus the more relaxed scenes?
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting part is that, you know, she is this sort of softer, gentler personality, but it was important that, you know, when we were in more intense situations during the hunt and when I have like, or when Alma has the authority to be able to say, you know, we do this, we do that, to authorize the hunt, that I have that authority and there is like strength there, there is responsibility there. uh you know, her being this gentler spirit doesn't mean that she doesn't have uh a very core strength about her too, and so that was really important to me to portray um during those voice lines. And that was, yeah, that was the whole team. The direction was definitely for her to still have the weight of that responsibility, um, alongside, you know, her general cooler demeanor.
I was actually going to ask this a bit later, but could you give us a taste of Elma? Perhaps a the guild authorizes the hunt, slay this monster?
The guild authorizes you to hunt.
That's a favorite of people as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, definitely. I've had so many people, whenever I'm like at conventions and stuff, ask me for that exact voice line. So I totally, it's great. And I've seen the memes, so like, yeah.
Food is a big part of Monster Hunter. Could you tell us a bit about the interactive food parts of the story, or while recording that from a voice perspective?
Yeah, it was that's really funny because I think the very first thing I ever recorded was like a super preliminary version of the scene. Ooh, I'm forgetting where it was, but the one where we eat like naan, like the cheese naan, I think.
Oh, you're like a little hut that's in like the
Yeah,
village
yeah,
you come
yeah.
into. Yeah.
I think like that was the very first scene that we or first cutscene, sorry, that we recorded. And we I don't think like it wasn't animated enough for me to see what we were eating, so I was just like having to like react like I really loved whatever I was eating. And then later when I saw the full animation, I was like, yeah, that looks really good.
Oh yeah.
We all did it. Yeah, that is delicious. That's amazing. We did a good job. Great. um yeah, the food, I'm like, I feel like half this budget is going towards the food animation because this looks really good. um but yeah, um I don't even remember the question, but that is my answer.
Food, eating food, talking about food.
Food, yeah.
Monsters are obviously a big part of Monster Hunter. Do you have a favorite monster, or perhaps a favorite filming scene based around a particular hunt slash monster?
It's so hard because I feel like each of them is like, you know, it's interesting in its own way, but also I feel like because for me, I with how we're recording the voice lines, I'm very much thinking about like the story components that are sort of associated with like, oh, in this at this point, you know, this thing happened with Nata and we met this monster. So like they're all associated with like specific moments for me. So it's hard to be like, this is my favorite. Um, but I don't know. It's so tough. This is a question I also ask people when we're talking Monster Hunter because I'm always curious about other people's like rationales. But it's a cop out. I feel like my answer changes every day. So like if I give an answer, I don't know. Today I will say Rathalos. Tomorrow, who knows? Who knows? It's hard. What is your favorite? Can I ask?
I can't remember the name, but there's one where you're fighting a dragon and there's like ice and lightning stuff going everywhere, and
Oh,
it's insane.
that's another thing where I'm just like, the level of creativity with the visuals is crazy. I am so like impressed every single time. And even when you see like preliminary versions of the animation, it's very cool. And so getting to see all of it together, it's amazing.
When performing the role, were there any particular lines or moments that really stuck out to you, whether that's a behind the scenes moment or from the dialogue?
Hmm. I would say, I would say overall, regardless of people's mixed opinions, my like favorite character to interact with was Nata, and I think like our relationship was so interesting. I think to portray, uh, because it's interesting because I feel like maybe it's slightly maternal, but I don't think I see it that way. I think Alma is just very she feels very protective of Nata, but I think like I don't know. Like their dynamic is just so interesting to me, and so I love exploring that every chance I get. And also Amber May is amazing as Nata. Um, but if I had to pick a particular scene, I mean, I kind of think like that cutscene where I'm like kind of like pulling Nata back as the hunter is like about to go kill Arkfeld, and I give Hunter authorization to do it. That's like a pretty intense scene, but it was really fun to record. Not like this is amazing, enjoying this kind of fun, but it was just like, there was a lot of emotion in that scene, so it was a good time to record.
Yeah, very emotionally driven, that
Yeah.
particular moment of the game. Is this a character you'd like to return to down the road if possible? I know we often see expansions or DLC arrive in the Monster Hunter games.
Yeah, I mean, I love Alma, so any chance I have to voice her would be amazing. I know zero about the future of anything, though. They like voice actors, I'm pretty sure are like the last people they tell these things to. Like they'll have whole schedules planned out, and then we'll know like a week before we record. So I don't know, but it would be very cool.
So we talked a little bit about the background there. Could you just sort of like set the scene and just kind of tell people a little bit like what the process is like once you kind of get in there and what you're seeing and what they're sort of directing you on?
Yeah, totally. Um, so usually we go into the studio. We kind of split things up by cutscenes and everything else. And the everything else also has its own categories like, oh, this is like the actual story content. This is like what, Alma might say as just like random responses to like if you've changed your outfit or the weather's changed or whatever, like just, kind of more generic reactions. So we usually do all the story stuff first. And this is typically the case for any video game, not just this one. Um, Usually follows a process similar to this. And you kind of just go one by one, knocking stuff out. And in this particular case, it's always helpful when you're recording for a localized game to be able to have access to the original language. And so some games you have that, some you don't. In this case, we had it sometimes, which was really wonderful to reference. Um, and so, yeah, you kind of just have your amazing director, in this case, Jonathan Klein, at New Generation Pictures, kind of guiding you through the story. This is the scene that we're in. This is the context for these particular lines. And we record some takes of that. Sometimes we might have to go back for some stuff, usually if it's pronunciation for me. And we just we keep going on through with that. And then the fun bit, especially fun bits for me, are getting to do the cutscenes. Because usually we get to see, sometimes it's just prelim video, and so like it's like big blocks moving around. Um but occasionally we are spoiled and we get to see like full animation. Um, and that's always really, really cool. And yeah, that kind of is, and this is also similar to other like JRPGs and like localized content is it's you basically dub at that point. Um, and try to match timing since there's an original language already recorded. Um, yeah, and it's interesting because throughout this process, you spend time at the very top, sort of establishing character. And for her, I mean, it's been a while since we started recording this character, so I can't remember exactly how much time we spent on that. But a lot of times, you discover the character along the way. And so I think we did a good job of like figuring out this is what we wanted to do with her. But she sort of grew and evolved and like gained little complexities as we continued to record through the script. This happens like all the time. This is usually like this is very common in recording like long games like this. And that was really cool. And that for me as an actor is always really fun to get to discover and get to know the character like in that way.
So I guess we kind of blended into this a bit, but you've done quite a few voice roles. Could you tell us a bit about the process for doing work on, say, a video game in comparison to a show from a voice recording standpoint? Like, what are the key differences there?
Yeah. So for a show, I'll talk about like a dubbed show versus also like a prelay show, which means that we don't dub and we just record the voices and then they animate after the fact. Um, so I would say they are very different. They can be different in terms of like style. I would say is the number one thing that comes to my mind as an actor. Because if I'm recording for like a Western animation, the style of acting and performance is very different from like say a JRPG. There's just, there's something we like to say a lot, which is like, we're always looking for cinematic grounded performances. But the cinematic and grounded that might work for a certain kind of genre doesn't totally work for the other. And I would say that's most typical in like dubbing, because we we perform, but we have to perform to timed existing performances. Um, and like we have to match lip flaps and we have to also match the level of energy that is already pre-established, like when they get really really big or they get like there are specific things that you don't have as much freedom to play around with because there's already something that exists. And you have to honor whatever the original performance was. You have to honor what the animation looks like. Um and then at the same time you have to put your own unique input into that character, so it's very much like patting your head, rubbing your stomach, and also doing like an Irish jig at the same time. I would say dubbing is like the hardest of all of like VO. It's very difficult. And then like localized games I think is a little less difficult because you have some of those components, especially for cutscenes. Like I said, it's basically dubbing. But for the actual like lines that you're recording, it might be timed, but you don't have to match mouth and lip flap. And so you have a lot more freedom in the kinds of reads that you can give. And so yeah, they tend to just be more free and a little more creative on the part of the actor to get to play with the character. And then prelay, I would say it's the most freedom. Prelay meaning pre-animation. For dubbing, animation's done, original voices are recorded, you're matching existing animation. Prelay, Western animation usually, it's you record and then they animate to whatever you recorded. So for prelay, because they haven't animated anything, you are just in a room, your imagination, like the boundaries of your imagination are the boundaries of your performance. And so it is limitless. And so you can do whatever you want. There's so much more freedom. So it's a lot of fun too. They're all fun in their individual ways, but they are slightly different. So hopefully that answers that.
What's it like to see your voice attached to a game character?
So weird. So weird. Been doing this for years and I still am not used to it. It's so bizarre. Um, I I will say I've gotten to the point where sometimes I don't recognize my own voice, which I think is a good sign. Because I feel like the alternative is over fixating and you're like always trying to like watch out for yourself. So it's hard to enjoy something that you're in just as like a casual fan. Um, and so in those cases, I'm like, I can't watch this if because I'm in it. I can never, maybe in like 5 years when I don't feel attached to it anymore, I could watch it then. But if I can't even like if I'm not paying hyper focused attention to myself, I can still just enjoy it like as a fan, which is nice. Um, it happens rarely, and I hope it happens more often, but most of the time it's the first thing where I'm like, "Oh, my voice is all over this. I can't engage with it. I'm so sorry. I'll see you guys in like 5 years when I can finally listen to my own voice." Um, but yeah, very strange. Very strange.
You certainly have tackled a range of roles. Were there any favorites from your career that you would want to highlight and talk more about? From what been seeing, you were everything from Lunar Remastered to Fortnite to Apex, and well, I guess you mentioned Genshin as well.
Yeah, I would say the project I am like most proud of, but it's also underrated, and this is why I always mention it, is I was in a show called Heavenly Delusion, which content warning if you check it out. It's kind of really intense, but it's like dystopian post-apocalyptic vibes. It's kind of very Last of Us feeling to me. But a lot more mystery and uh the writing is really it's phenomenal. But content warnings. And yeah, it is, I think, the most challenging role I've ever had. But it's also the role that I think I'm most proud of, because of like the difficulties in portraying that character, and getting through them. So yeah, Heavenly Delusion. You should check it out. It's a great show.
Your Shandy in Street Fighter 6, what's the process like doing a fighter character as opposed to voicing a traditional role playing like character?
Very, actually, pretty similar. I would say the only difference is that you have to do like fight reacts, like punching, kicking, getting injured. And usually they do all the regular voice lines. And then at the end of your session, because that's vocally stressful, they'll put all of those like fighting type reacts at the very end. Your dying reacts and your, getting punched in the stomach reacts. Um, I wouldn't say it's too different. It can get a little repetitive because you have to do like, oh, the like low intensity version of getting kicked in the face, the medium intensity version of that, the high intensity version. So it can get a little repetitive, like compared to when you're just doing story content, but otherwise it's pretty similar.
Outside of voice work, you have also done work in casting and production. Could you tell us a bit about that work and those experiences, and if they've had any influence on what you bring to your voice roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I've cast and directed a few games. I've worked on production on quite a few projects as well, as a production supervisor. I really enjoy it, and I think like as a creative person, I think we benefit from sort of being able to explore how we can be a part of the creative process in a lot of different ways because like directing a game helps me as an actor, like in acting in games, because I better understand, well, what is the director trying to get out of this scene, what is it that they're trying to communicate to me. Because I've worn their hat, I understand them a little bit better, and so our communication improves. uh Same thing with casting. Like if I, as an actor, I'm only sitting on one side and I haven't like seen the other perspective at all, I think it's very easy, especially as an actor, because you are rejected every single day, like so many times. It's a career of rejection constantly. Some of the best actors, their like booking rate won't be more than like 5%. Truly. And so I think like but having worn the casting hat and like having been a part of conversations figuring out, okay, well these two actors are both incredible, we got to pick one. Like sometimes it's not about you. Like I've had situations where I'm like, wow, this actor is fantastic, however they sound too similar to this other actor who was cast in this other role. Well, cast chemistry matters. Like there are so many things outside of your control as an actor that influences casting. and that's just how it is. And so like that's been very helpful as well as an actor to be able to internalize and be like, okay, it's not personal. I can only control what I can control and do the best that I can do, and then the rest is up to fate and, forces outside my control. And so and so in those ways, and I'm also a writer, and that influences like when I as an actor have to like cold read a million scripts. We don't get scripts ahead of time, and so I have to cold read and sort of put together, connect the dots of like what's going on with story stuff, and sort of like what's being teed up and like sprinkled in. That kind of stuff is very helpful too. And so just creative roles, I think, feed into each other. So it's really helpful to be a part of multiple pieces of the pie. Yeah.
Lastly, I would like to leave a spot for you to say something or go over anything I might have missed during the interview.
I'm in this show called Kowloon Generic Romance. I think that's currently airing. It is currently airing. I don't know why I said that, I think. What else is coming out right now? The problem with me is my memory sucks, and so usually when something comes out, I find out 2 months later. um, that's the only one I can think of right now. There's probably more stuff. Check out IMDb or Twitter. That's usually X. That's usually where I update stuff.